Lixmoth had observed 15,000 species across her career as a xenobiologist, and not one of them had prepared her for what she was witnessing on the monitoring screen. Human children, actual infant humans, barely past their larval stage, were attacking each other with what could only be described as enthusiastic violence. "Hukpa," she said, her translator struggling to keep the tremor from her voice. "Are you seeing this?" The Morphid military historian swiveled 3 of his eye stalks toward her station, the 4th remaining fixed on his own data stream. "Seeing what?" "I'm reviewing the Human Naval Academy curriculum and—" He stopped. All 4 eye stalks snapped to her screen. "By the mothers of the deep, what are they doing?" On the display, a human child, no more than 3 rotations old by Lixmoth's estimation, had just launched itself from a raised platform onto another child. They tumbled across the soft flooring in a tangle of limbs, making high-pitched vocalizations that the translation matrix couldn't quite parse. Laughter? Battle cries? It was impossible to tell. "They're fighting," Lixmoth whispered. "The human spawn are engaged in combat training." "That one just climbed a wall," Hukpa said, his voice climbing 3 octaves. "A vertical wall, for no tactical reason. It just scrambled up there like prey fleeing a— Oh, no! Now it's jumping back down!" The child in question had indeed scaled what appeared to be a small climbing structure, reaching the top with disturbing ease, and was now hanging by its tiny hands before dropping to the ground below. It landed, stumbled, and immediately ran back to climb again. Lixmoth felt her respiratory slits constrict. Should we alert the Galactic Council? Are we witnessing a violation of the Sentient Rights Accord? They're so small, Hukpa. They can't possibly have developed enough neural capacity to consent to gladiatorial conditioning. "Pull up the facility designation," Hukpa said, already typing frantically at his own console. "Cross-reference with military installations, training grounds, youth conscription centers." "It's listed as a daycare center," Lixmoth read, her confusion deepening. "That translates to offspring supervision facility, a place where adult humans leave their young while they engage in other activities." "So it's not a military academy?" "The designation suggests it's civilian." They stared at the screen in horrified silence. On the display, a new development unfolded. An adult human, presumably a supervisor, had entered the frame. Surely, this guardian would put a stop to the violence, separate the combatants, tend to the wounded. The adult was smiling and clapping its hands in what the translation matrix tagged as encouragement. "I'm going to vomit," Hukpa announced. "I'm physically going to expel my last meal." "Request human liaison presence," Lixmoth said, stabbing at her communication panel. "Immediately. Priority Alpha." Tully arrived 6 minutes later, looking slightly out of breath and carrying what appeared to be a beverage container. "Hey, sorry, I was on my lunch break. What's the emergency? Did someone finally figure out how to work the coffee machine without—" He glanced at the screen and stopped. "Oh, you found the daycare feed." "Found?" Lixmoth's voice rose to a pitch that made Hukapa's sensory fronds retract. "We have found evidence of systematic child abuse, and you're concerned about beverage preparation?" Tully blinked. Then he looked at the screen again. Looked back at Lixmoth. "Wait, are you talking about the kids playing?" "Playing?" Hukpa's eye stalks quivered with indignation. "That small one just put another in a submission hold. We watched it happen. The victim made distress sounds." "Yeah, that's Tommy and Keisha. They're buddies. Best friends, actually." Tully took a sip of his coffee. completely unbothered by the crisis unfolding before them. They play like that every afternoon. Lixmoth pointed a trembling digit at the screen, where two children were now engaged in what could only be described as a wrestling match. You're telling me this is normal? This is accepted human behavior for offspring? I mean, yeah? Kids roughhouse. It's how they learn boundaries, develop motor skills, build social bonds. Tully squinted at the monitor. Oh, nice. They set up the new climbing wall. My kids would love that. The climbing wall. Huckpaw spoke slowly, as if testing each word for traps. You're saying that vertical assault structure is a recent addition? Something you added to enhance this facility? Well, sure. Physical activity is important for development. Climbing is great exercise, builds confidence, spatial awareness. They're children, Lixmoth interrupted. Vulnerable, developing children who should be protected from dangerous vertical environments until their neural pathways have fully matured and they can assess risk with adult cognition. Tully set down his coffee. Okay, I'm sensing some cultural disconnect here. You guys are freaking out about normal playground stuff. What exactly do you think is happening? We think, Lixmoth said carefully, that you are conditioning your young for warfare through systematic exposure to violence and hazardous elevation-based obstacles. The human was quiet for a moment. Then his face did something strange. His mouth stretched, his eyes crinkled, and he made a sound like air escaping from a pressure valve. Laughter, Lixmoth realized with growing mortification. He was laughing at them. Oh, man, Tully gasped between laughs. Oh, you guys. No, we're not training baby soldiers. They're just playing, having fun, burning off energy so they don't drive their parents insane. But the climbing, Huckpaw protested weakly. The vertical movement, the falls. One of them just tumbled from a height of at least 2 body lengths. Yeah, onto a padded mat. That's why we have safety surfaces. Tully pulled up a chair, apparently settling in for what he anticipated would be a long conversation. Look, human kids are basically indestructible rubber balls. They bounce. They're supposed to climb and jump and roll around. It's instinct. Instinct, Lixmoth repeated, to scale vertical surfaces. Well, yeah. Our ancestors lived in trees. We're descended from primates. Climbing things is literally coded into our DNA. You might as well ask us not to walk upright. Huckpaw made a sound like grinding minerals. Your ancestors lived in trees? As in elevated plant structures? Suspended above the ground by, you're saying your entire species evolved in a vertical environment? I mean, we came down eventually, started walking around on the savannah, developed tools, all that. But the climbing thing stuck. Tully gestured at the screen, where a child was now hanging upside down from a horizontal bar, giggling. See? That kid's just monkeying around. Literally. It's what we do. Lixmoth pulled up her xenobiology database with shaking digits. Huckpaw, run a search. How many spacefaring species evolved in arboreal environments? Searching. A pause. Result. 0. Well, 1 if we count the Kilnoth, but they're technically fungal colonies and they don't really… 0, Lixmoth said flatly. Out of 312 known spacefaring civilizations, humans are the only ones who evolved climbing trees. Huh, Tully said. Neat. That explains why the station architecture was so weird when I first got here. Everything's so flat, like aggressively horizontal. Because normal species don't voluntarily increase their distance from stable ground. Huckpaw's voice had taken on a hysterical edge. Elevation is dangerous. Falling is dangerous. Why would any sane organism climb something unless absolutely necessary for survival. I mean, it's fun, Tully offered. The view's nice, good exercise, makes you feel accomplished when you reach the top. Fun, Lixmoth said, testing the word. You find mortal peril. Fun. It's not really mortal peril if you know what you're doing. And we teach kids early so they learn how to do it safely. Tully pulled out his personal display device. Here, let me show you some photos from my weekend. Took the kids to this great climbing gym. No, both aliens said simultaneously. But Tully was already swiping through images. See, this is my daughter on the bouldering wall. She's only 5, but she's already doing intermediate routes. And this is my son. He's 8. He did the whole rope course, including the zip line at the end. They had a blast. The photos showed human children suspended at horrifying heights, clinging to artificial handholds on near-vertical surfaces, dangling from rope networks, sliding down cables strung between elevated platforms. And they were smiling. Every single one of them looked delighted. Your offspring, Huckpa said slowly, voluntarily, engaged with these structures, without coercion, without military necessity. I mean, I had to bribe them to leave. We were there for 3 hours, and they wanted to stay longer. Lixmoth closed her eyes, opened them. The nightmare was still there. Tully, I need you to understand the gravity of what you're telling us. You're saying that human children, given the choice between safe ground-level activities and dangerous vertical challenges, will actively choose the dangerous option for enjoyment? Yeah, pretty much. Kids love climbing. Adults too, actually. It's like a whole thing. Indoor climbing gyms are super popular. Outdoor climbing, bouldering, mountaineering. Mountaineering? Lixmoth's translator might have glitched on that word. As in, mountains? You climb mountains? The massive, elevated terrain formations that are explicitly listed in every planetary survey as hazardous topography to be avoided? Oh, absolutely. People climb mountains all the time. Mount Everest, K2, the Matterhorn. Those are the famous ones. But there are climbing routes all over the world. It's a whole sport. Hukipa had gone very still, which Lixmoth recognized as the Morphid equivalent of a panic response. Sport, he echoed. You turned vertical warfare into sport. What? No, we didn't turn warfare into anything. Climbing is just climbing. It's recreation. Pull up human military history, Lixmoth ordered, her scientific curiosity overriding her horror. Cross-reference with topographical data from human conflicts. The data streamed across her screen, and with each passing line, her respiratory slits constricted further. Mountain warfare, siege warfare on fortified walls, trench warfare with vertical assault tactics, urban combat in multi-level structures, cliff-scaling raids, high-altitude strategic positions. Humans hadn't just fought wars in 3 dimensions. They'd actively sought out vertical battlefields. Tully, she said quietly, why did your ancestors fight wars in mountains? The human shrugged. Because mountains are defensible positions? High ground gives you tactical advantage? And it didn't occur to your species to simply avoid the mountains? To fight in sensible, flat terrain where no one would risk falling to their deaths? Well, that wouldn't make much sense if the thing you're fighting over is in the mountains. Tully looked genuinely confused by the question. You can't just ignore terrain because it's difficult. You adapt to it. No, Huckpa said, his voice distant. No, you don't adapt to it. Every other species in the galaxy avoids difficult terrain. The Morphid military doctrine explicitly states, seek flat ground for engagement. Elevation is the enemy's advantage only if you're foolish enough to give it to them. Huh, yeah, that seems limiting. Limiting? Hukapa's eye stalks were now fully extended in agitation. It's sensible. It's survival. You don't climb the mountain because the mountain can kill you. I mean, so can lots of things. Cars kill people. We still drive them. Lixmoth pulled up another video feed, this one from a public database of human recreation. Tully, what am I looking at here? The human glanced at the screen. Oh, that's free solo climbing. Alex Honnold, probably. He's famous for climbing El Capitan without ropes. Without ropes? Yeah, it's super impressive. Takes incredible skill and mental focus. He's climbing a vertical rock face of, Lixmoth checked the statistics, of 914 meters, without safety equipment. For fun? Well, for the challenge, the accomplishment. The view's probably amazing too. Hukpa made a sound like rocks grinding in a disposal unit. I need to sit down. You're already sitting. Then I need to sit down more. Lixmoth pulled up another feed, and another. Rock climbing competitions. Parkour athletes vaulting across rooftops. Urban explorers scaling abandoned buildings. Base jumpers leaping from cliffs. Ice climbers ascending frozen waterfalls. Humans weren't just comfortable with vertical space. They sought it out, celebrated it, competed in it, and apparently found it deeply enjoyable. The children, Lixmoth said, returning to the original daycare feed. The roughhousing, the climbing. This is just normal? This is what healthy human development looks like? Yep. Kids need physical play. They need to test boundaries, take safe risks, learn what their bodies can do. The climbing stuff especially. It builds confidence, problem-solving skills, physical strength. Tully watched the screen fondly. See that kid in the red shirt? The one who just helped the smaller kid reach the top of the climbing frame? That's social learning in action. That's empathy development. By conquering a vertical obstacle together, Hukpa said weakly. I mean, when you put it that way, it sounds weird, but yeah. Lixmoth felt something shift in her understanding. Tully, do human children ever get hurt during this play? Oh, sure. Bumps, bruises, scraped knees. Occasionally someone falls wrong and breaks a bone. It happens. And the adults allow this? Well, we try to minimize serious injuries with safety equipment and supervision, but yeah, you can't protect kids from every possible hurt. They need to learn limits, and sometimes that means experiencing minor consequences. It's part of growing up. Experiencing minor consequences, Lixmoth repeated, by falling from heights, or misjudging a jump, or grabbing a handhold wrong, or playing too rough with a friend. Kids are resilient. They bounce back. On the screen, a child tumbled off a low platform, rolled, and popped back up laughing before running to try again. Hukpa watched this with the expression of someone witnessing a fundamental universal law being violated. That should have caused distress. Impact from that height should trigger fear response, not whatever that was. Joy, Tully offered. Having fun? Being a kid? Madness, Hukpa muttered. We're documenting collective species-wide madness. Lixmoth, however, was beginning to see something else. Tully, among humans, is this climbing behavior considered abnormal? Are these children unusual in their abilities or interests? Nah, this is pretty standard. Some kids are more into it than others, but most go through a climbing phase. It's developmental. And the adults who supervise them, do they also possess these vertical movement capabilities? I mean, most adults can climb if they need to. We might not be as fearless as kids, but the basic ability is there. It's like riding a bike. Once you learn, You don't really forget. A hypothesis was forming in Liximoth's mind, terrifying in its implications. Hukpa, pull up the schematics for human military vessels. Focus on internal layout. The schematics appeared on screen, and Liximoth's hypothesis solidified into horrifying certainty. Multiple decks, vertical access shafts, ladder wells, climbing infrastructure built into ship design. The human vessels weren't just multi-leveled. They were designed with the assumption that crew members would regularly move vertically through the ship's interior. "Oh, mothers of the deep," Hukpa whispered. "Their warships are vertical mazes. How do they not fall to their deaths during combat maneuvers?" "We have gravity stabilizers," Tully said helpfully, "and handholds. Plus, you get used to moving in 3 dimensions pretty quick." 3 dimensions, Lixmoth said. "Hukpa, run a tactical simulation. Human ground forces versus galactic standard forces. Urban environment, multi-level structures." "Lixmoth, I don't think—" "Run it." The simulation loaded. Lixmoth input standard engagement parameters, equal numbers, equivalent technology. The results were catastrophic. Human forces didn't just win. They dominated in ways the simulation could barely process. They attacked from above, from below, through windows of elevated structures. They scaled walls the defending forces had assumed were impassable barriers. They used vertical space the way other species used horizontal cover. It wasn't warfare. It was 3-dimensional chess against an opponent who could only move in 2 dimensions. "Run it again," Lixmoth ordered. "Adjust defensive parameters to account for vertical assault." The simulation ran. Same result. "Again, give defensive forces elevated positions." The humans simply climbed higher. "Again, remove all vertical access points." The humans created their own with climbing equipment. Tully was watching the simulations with interest. "Huh, that's pretty accurate, actually. Urban warfare doctrine does emphasize vertical mobility. You guys want me to pull up the training manuals?" "No," Lixmoth and Hukpa said in unison. On the daycare feed, a child had climbed to the top of the highest structure in the play area and was waving at its companions below, clearly pleased with itself. "Arti," adult supervisor waved back, still smiling. Lixmoth watched the child, the casual competence of its movement, the complete absence of fear, and felt a cold certainty settle over her. Humanity hadn't conquered trees, then mountains, then eventually the vertical battlefields of their endless wars, because they were uniquely aggressive or militaristic. They'd done it because, to them, vertical space wasn't a terrifying abnormality to be avoided. It was just more space, more room to move, to play, to explore. And now they were reaching for the stars, bringing that same 3-dimensional thinking with them. "Tully," she said quietly, "when humans design space stations, how many levels do they typically incorporate?" "Oh, as many as practical. More levels means more usable space. The new station design we're proposing has 15 decks, plus access shafts, maintenance tubes, and vertical gardens." He paused. "Why?" Lixmoth looked at Hukpa. Hukpa looked back. "No reason," Lixmoth said faintly. "No reason at all." On the screen, the children continued to play, tumbling and climbing and laughing, completely unaware that they were practicing an evolutionary advantage that would reshape galactic civilization. And somewhere in the background, barely visible, an adult human watched over them with patient affection, making sure they didn't hurt themselves too badly while they learned to conquer their vertical world, just like their ancestors had done, just like their descendants would continue to do. Only now, with an entire galaxy full of nice, flat-dwelling species who had never imagined that space could be anything other than horizontal. Lixmoth had a feeling this was going to require a very long report to the council. Lixmoth hadn't slept in 2 rotations. Sleep seemed irrelevant when faced with the cosmic horror of human recreational activities. Her workspace had become a shrine to obsessive research, screens flickering with human historical footage, anatomical diagrams, military treatises, and an alarming number of videos tagged extreme sports. The term itself was misleading. What humans considered extreme apparently meant Tuesday afternoon in their cultural context. "You need to see this," she told Hukpa when he arrived for the morning shift. Her voice had the hollow quality of someone who'd stared into an abyss and found it installing climbing holds. "I'm not sure I want to," Hukpa replied, but he looked at her screen anyway. The video showed a human ascending a sheer cliff face, fingers wedged into cracks barely wider than bone, feet smearing against smooth rock, body hanging hundreds of meters above the ground. "That's horrifying," Hukpa said. "That's called traditional climbing," Lixmoth corrected. "It's considered a foundational skill. This particular human is what they call a weekend warrior. This is his hobby." "His hobby?" "Wait, it gets better." Lixmoth pulled up another file. "This is parkour, urban movement, discipline. Watch." The footage showed humans vaulting over railings, leaping between buildings, scaling walls, dropping from heights that should have shattered bones, rolling through the impact, and continuing without pause. "They're fleeing something," Hukpa said hopefully. "Emergency evacuation? Natural disaster? Exercise. They do this for exercise." Hukpa's eye stalks drooped. "I want to go home. I want to go back to my nice, flat planet where the most dangerous thing is aggressive weather patterns." "You can't." Ixquel called a full briefing, all senior staff. She wants a comprehensive analysis of human vertical warfare capabilities before the council session next rotation. Lixmoth pulled up another file, this one a dense military history text. "So, I've been reading. Do you know what a mountain division is?" "I'm assuming it's not a mathematical operation." "It's an entire military unit specifically trained to fight in elevated terrain. The humans have multiple divisions, had multiple divisions, historically. They fought entire campaigns in mountain ranges." She scrolled through battle reports. "The Alps, the Himalayas, the Andes. They didn't avoid the mountains, Hukpa. They fought over them, like they were disputing who got to stand on the tallest rocks." "That's insane. That's just mountain warfare. Then there's siege warfare, scaling castle walls under enemy fire, trench warfare, climbing out of ditches to charge across hostile ground, urban warfare in cities with buildings reaching hundreds of stories high." Lixmoth's digits trembled on the keyboard. They invented specialized equipment for vertical assault: ladders, grappling hooks, climbing ropes, pitons. Modern humans use something called ascenders that— "Stop! Stop! I can't process any more of this." Hukpa settled heavily into his chair. "What do we even tell Ixquel? That humans are functionally insane by galactic standards?" "We tell her the truth. Humans are 3-dimensional combatants in a 2-dimensional galaxy. Every other species evolved on relatively flat terrain. Our military doctrines, our architecture, our entire spatial reasoning, it's all horizontal. Humans think in layers." The door chimed. Tully entered, looking annoyingly cheerful for someone whose species had just been identified as a potential existential threat to galactic military doctrine. "Morning! Brought pastries." He set down a container. "Thought you guys might need brain food after yesterday's freakout." "We weren't freaking out," Lixmoth said. We were experiencing rational concern about— You called me 6 times last night, asking about climbing accidents and mortality rates. That was research. At 3 in the morning, you asked if humans could instinctively navigate vertical environments in complete darkness. Tully grabbed a pastry. For the record, not instinctively, but with practice, yeah. Cave climbing is a thing. Hookpaw made a noise like a deflating balloon. Anyway, Tully continued, I mentioned your concerns to Dr. Fumiko from the medical bay. She wanted to come talk to you about human physiology. Thought it might help. Send her in, Lixmoth said. Maybe a medical perspective will make this less terrifying. It did not make it less terrifying. Dr. Fumiko arrived with charts, diagrams, and the casual competence of someone who'd spent decades studying human anatomy. So, Tully says you're worried about our climbing abilities? Worried is insufficient terminology, Lixmoth said. Existentially disturbed is closer. Right, well, let me show you why humans are so good at it. Fumiko pulled up a skeletal diagram. See our hands? Opposable thumbs, flexible wrists, finger strength optimized for gripping. Our shoulders have incredible range of motion. We can rotate our arms almost completely around. Useful for reaching holds above our heads. That's disturbing. Our feet are platforms for balance, but our toes retain enough flexibility for smearing against surfaces. Our center of mass is positioned for bipedal movement, which frees up our hands for climbing. Fumiko highlighted different bone structures. Strong leg muscles for pushing upward. Core strength for body tension. Spatial awareness centers in the brain that process three-dimensional movement naturally. Naturally, Lixmoth repeated weakly. Well, sure. Our ancestors spent millions of rotations in trees before we came down to walk upright. The adaptations stuck. Fumiko smiled. We're literally built for climbing. It's why toddlers start climbing furniture before they can speak full sentences. The instinct is hardwired. The toddlers, Huckpaw muttered. Back to the terrifying toddlers. They're not terrifying. They're just kinetic learners. Physical play teaches spatial reasoning, risk assessment, social bonding. By falling off things. By learning their physical limits in a controlled environment, yes. Fumiko pulled up a developmental chart. Human children need to roughhouse, need to climb, need to test boundaries. It's how we develop proprioception, confidence, problem-solving skills. A child who never falls never learns how to fall safely. Lixmoth stared at the doctor. You're telling me controlled falling is an educational objective? I mean, we don't put it in the curriculum that way, but essentially, yes. Better they learn to tuck and roll on a padded playground than figure it out during an actual emergency. Your entire species is designed to survive falls, Huckpaw said, voice distant. You plan for falls. You practice falling. Well, gravity exists whether we like it or not. Might as well learn to work with it. Fumiko glanced at Tully. You still doing indoor climbing on weekends? Every Sunday. Kids love it. Great family activity. See? Generational transmission of vertical movement skills through recreational activity. It's beautiful, really. Keeps the old evolutionary adaptations sharp. It's terrifying, Lixmoth corrected. Potato, potato. Fumiko shrugged. Look, I know it seems strange from your perspective, but this is just how humans are. We climb things. We always have. We always will. It's who we are. And when your species expands further into the galaxy? Lixmoth asked quietly. When you build stations and colonies designed for three-dimensional living, what happens to species who can't follow you upward? The room went quiet, Fumiko and Tully exchanged glances. Huh, Tully said finally. That's actually a good question. I never thought about it, but yeah, human architecture does tend to go vertical. More efficient use of space. Plus, it just feels right? Having multiple levels? It feels right, because your brain is wired for it, Lixmoth said. Because your ancestors survived by thinking in 3 dimensions. But the rest of us? She gestured at herself and Hukpa. We're flatlanders. Elevation triggers fear responses. Our species avoided vertical environments because they killed us. You conquered them because they were just more trees to climb. The silence stretched. Well, Fumiko said eventually, that's going to be an interesting accommodation challenge for multi-species habitats. That, Hukipa said, is the understatement of the millennium. On Lixmoth's screen, a video continued playing on mute. A human child, no more than 6 rotations old, scaling a climbing wall with the casual competence of someone doing something as natural as walking. Which, for humans, it apparently was. Lixmoth had a briefing to prepare for Ixquel. It was going to be a very, very long briefing. The briefing room felt smaller than usual, despite being the largest conference space on the observation station. Perhaps it was the presence of 5 different species representatives, each radiating varying degrees of discomfort, as Lixmoth's presentation continued. Ixquel sat at the head of the table, her Quellan features unreadable. Beside her, Fexil, the Luminath crystalline intelligence, refracted light in patterns that suggested deep contemplation. The other representatives looked like they wanted to leave. So, Ixquel said, breaking the silence that had followed Lixmoth's latest revelation, you're telling me that human military doctrine includes a section on rapid vertical insertion techniques. Multiple sections, Lixmoth confirmed, with specialized equipment, training regimens, and historical case studies dating back thousands of rotations. And this is normal for them? Completely standard. They teach it at their military academies alongside what they consider basic skills like marksmanship and field medicine. Fexel's crystalline structure hummed. I have reviewed the historical database. No other species in recorded galactic history has ever developed comparable vertical combat doctrine. The closest parallel is the morphid cave fighting techniques, which operate at a maximum elevation differential of 3 meters. 3 meters seems reasonable, one of the other representatives muttered. 3 meters you can survive falling from. Humans routinely train at heights exceeding 30 meters, Lixmoth said. Their paratroopers deploy from aircraft at altitudes measured in kilometers. The room went quiet again. Hukpa stepped forward, his eye stalks extended in what Lixmoth recognized as academic presentation mode. With the commander's permission, I'd like to demonstrate the tactical implications. Ixquel gestured assent. The holographic display activated, showing a generic urban environment, multi-level buildings, elevated walkways, varied terrain, standard galactic city planning. Nothing unusual. Scenario: combined force engagement, Hukapa explained. 20 human soldiers versus 20 standard galactic troops. Equivalent weaponry. Equivalent training hours. Equivalent tactical intelligence. The only variable is environmental doctrine. The simulation began. For the first 30 seconds, both forces moved normally, taking cover, establishing firing positions, coordinating advancement, standard military procedure. Then the human forces went vertical. Half the squad scaled the nearest building using climbing gear. Others entered ground-level structures and emerged from upper windows. 2 disappeared into what appeared to be a drainage system, and surfaced behind enemy lines through an elevated access point. The galactic troops, programmed with standard doctrine, treated the buildings as impassable obstacles and the elevated positions as inaccessible high ground. They established a defensive perimeter and waited for the human forces to advance through predictable horizontal approaches. The human forces attacked from above, below, and through structural features the defenders had classified as walls. The simulation ended in 4 minutes. "That's," one representative started, then stopped. "That's not possible. The defensive positions were sound. The coverage was complete. How did—" "They climbed over your coverage," Hukpa said flatly. "Your troops never looked up because your doctrine doesn't account for threats from elevated positions. The humans exploited the third dimension while you operated in two." "Run it again," Ixquel ordered. "Adjust defensive parameters to monitor vertical approaches." The simulation reset. This time, the galactic forces positioned sentries to watch elevated positions, adjusted their coverage patterns to account for overhead threats. The humans adapted immediately. They used the building interiors, moved through connected structures, created new access points by breaching walls at unexpected heights. When the defenders compensated, the humans simply climbed higher than anticipated, moved through spaces too narrow for the defenders to follow, or used repelling techniques to attack from angles the defense grid couldn't cover. 4 minutes. Same result. "Again," Ixquel said, voice tight. "Full urban environment. Give defenders elevated positions." The humans climbed higher. "Again. Limit vertical access points." The humans brought their own climbing equipment. "Again. Seal all buildings. Remove external handholds." The humans used suction devices, magnetic grips, and what appeared to be controlled explosive charges to create new handholds. After the 6th simulation, Ixquel stopped requesting variations. "This is catastrophic," she said quietly. "Our entire military framework is designed around horizontal engagement. We have no counter-doctrine for this." "It gets worse," Lixmoth said, pulling up new data. "This is footage from human recreational activities." The screen filled with images. Humans free-climbing cliff faces, dangling from overhangs by fingertips, traversing rope courses suspended between trees, scaling frozen waterfalls, jumping between buildings in urban environments. "These aren't soldiers," Lixmoth continued. "These are civilians, children, elders, hobbyists. The capability isn't limited to military personnel. It's species-wide." Fexil's glow intensified. Query: At what age do humans develop functional vertical mobility? "Approximately 18 months after birth," Lixmoth said. "They begin climbing furniture before they can communicate complex verbal concepts." 18 months, Fexil repeated. "Morphid young don't develop comparable spatial awareness until they reach 15% of adult mass. Quellan offspring require supervised mobility training until their 3rd rotation. Human children climb instinctively while still in developmental stages?" "Correct. It's hardwired into their neurology." One of the representatives, a Quellan military advisor, spoke up. "Commander Ixquel, with respect, this changes everything. Our defensive installations, our station designs, our fleet protocols. None of them account for combatants who can access vertical space as easily as horizontal. If humans decided to—" "They won't," Tully's voice cut through the rising panic. Everyone turned. The human liaison was leaning against the doorframe, looking annoyed. "You weren't invited to this briefing," Ixquel said. "Yeah, well, your security told me there was a crisis session about human capabilities. So I figured I should probably attend before you guys declared us a galactic threat or something." Tully moved into the room. "For the record, We're not planning to conquer the galaxy using our superior climbing abilities. Your military doctrine suggests otherwise, Hookpaw said. Our military doctrine suggests we like having options in combat. Big difference between we can fight in 3 dimensions and we're going to use that to dominate everyone. Tully looked at the frozen simulation. Yeah, we'd probably win in urban combat. We'd also win in forest terrain, mountainous regions, any environment with vertical features. You know where we'd lose? Open plains, flat desert. Anywhere our mobility advantage doesn't apply. That's not reassuring, the Quellan advisor said. It's not supposed to be reassuring. It's supposed to be realistic. Tully crossed his arms. Look, every species has advantages. Morphids have superior sensory perception. Quellans have better long-range communication. Luminath can process data faster than our computers. We climb good. That's just biology. But the implications for multi-species habitats, Lixmoth started, are complicated, yeah, I get it. Human architecture is vertical because we think in layers. Our stations have multiple decks. Our buildings have floors stacked high. Our cities grow upward as much as outward. Tully shrugged. But we're not trying to make life difficult for other species. We just build the way that makes sense to us, which creates environments that other species find hostile, Fexil observed. Or we could call it diverse, Tully countered. Different species, different environmental preferences. Some like it hot, some like it cold. Some build wide, some build tall. That's not a threat. That's just variety. Ixquel studied the human. You're suggesting we're overreacting. I'm suggesting you're catastrophizing based on tactical simulations without considering actual human behavior. Yeah, we can fight in 3 dimensions. We can also cooperate, negotiate, trade, and coexist. The fact that we're good at climbing doesn't mean we're planning to climb all over everyone else. But the capability exists, Huckpaw said. The advantage is real. So is our preference for not starting wars, Tully replied. Humanity learned that lesson the hard way, multiple times. We're not looking to repeat it on a galactic scale. The room settled into uncomfortable contemplation. Finally, Ixquel spoke. The Council needs to know about this, not as a threat assessment, but as a cultural compatibility study. If humans are going to integrate into galactic society, other species need to understand these differences. Fair enough, Tully said. Just maybe frame it as humans have unique spatial abilities instead of humanity is a vertical warfare nightmare waiting to happen. I'll consider diplomatic phrasing, Ixquel said dryly. As the briefing concluded and representatives filed out, Lixmoth caught Tully's attention. For what it's worth, we weren't trying to villainize your species. We were just surprised. I know. And honestly, seeing it from your perspective? Tully grinned. Yeah, we're probably pretty weird. The climbing thing is normal to us, but I get how it looks from the outside. Terrifying? I was going to say impressive, but sure, terrifying works too. Lixmoth watched him leave, then turned back to her data screens. Somewhere on those screens, human children continued tumbling over each other on playgrounds, practicing the skills their ancestors had used to conquer vertical battlefields. And the galaxy was only just beginning to understand what that meant. Lixmoth had expected the field trip to be a disaster. What she hadn't expected was for it to be an educational disaster that fundamentally altered her understanding of human psychology. The climbing facility was enormous, a warehouse converted into what appeared to be a 3-dimensional playground for adults. Walls covered in colorful handholds stretched to the ceiling. Rope structures dangled overhead. Padded floors cushioned the inevitable falls, and humans of every age swarmed over it all like cheerful, determined insects. "This is your idea of recreation?" Ixquel asked, her voice tight. "Pretty much," Tully said. "Great workout, fun problem-solving, good social activity. My kids are over there. See them?" Two small humans were scaling a wall marked with different colored holds, chattering to each other about roots and beta in terminology that made no sense to Lixmoth's translator. "They're so small," Huckpa whispered. "They shouldn't be able to. Oh no, that one just jumped to a higher hold." "Dynamic move," Tully said proudly. "She's been working on that technique." Dr. Fumiko appeared beside them, wearing strange rubber shoes and chalk dust on her hands. "You all made it. Want to try the beginner wall?" "Absolutely not," Ixquel said immediately. "Come on, it's fun. Just a few meters. Nice big holds. Completely safe." "Commander," Fexil said, their crystalline structure pulsing thoughtfully, "perhaps a practical demonstration would be illuminating." "You want me to climb that wall?" "I want us to understand what humans experience. Theory only teaches so much." Ixquel looked at the wall, looked at Fexil, looked at Lixmoth, who nodded reluctantly. "Fine. But if I perish, I'm haunting all of you." 15 minutes later, Ixquel was 1 meter off the ground, all 4 limbs trembling, making sounds Lixmoth had never heard a Quellan produce. "You're doing great!" a small human voice called up. "Just reach for the blue one." The voice belonged to Tully's daughter, hanging casually from holds 3 meters above Ixquel's position, offering encouragement with the patient kindness of someone who genuinely wanted to help. "I can't," Ixquel said. "I physically cannot move." "Sure you can. Look, put your foot on that purple hold. Yeah, that one. Now just shift your weight and reach up. I believe in you." Lixmoth watched something shift in Ixquel's posture. The commander took a breath, moved her foot, reached for the blue hold, made it another half-meter before freezing again. "That's awesome," the child cheered. "You're so brave." "I am a decorated military commander," Ixquel said to the wall. "I have commanded fleets through hostile territory. I have negotiated peace treaties and survived diplomatic crises. Why is this small wall defeating me?" "Because you're not built for it," Fumiko called up. "Your species evolved on flat terrain. This triggers every survival instinct you have. The fact that you're up there at all is impressive." "Can I come down now?" "Absolutely. Just let go. The rope will catch you." Ixquel let go, dropped half a meter before the auto-belay system engaged, and was lowered gently to the ground. She stood there for a moment, breathing hard. Then she started laughing. "What's funny?" Lixmoth asked. "We spent days terrified that humans were training child soldiers," Ixquel said between gasps. "Turns out they were just being humans, and we couldn't even climb 1 meter without having existential crises." "To be fair," Huckpa said, 1 meter is legitimately terrifying." "It's really not," Tully's daughter said, having descended her route and landed nearby. "It's fun. You just have to practice." Lixmoth watched the child, this tiny human who'd climbed 3 meters with less fear than a Quellan commander had shown at 1 meter, and finally understood. Humans weren't conditioning their young for warfare. They weren't creating super soldiers through playground training. They were just teaching their children to be human, to move through space the way their biology intended, to find joy in physical challenges that other species found paralyzing. It wasn't aggression. It wasn't militarism. It was just humanity, being itself. "I have a question," Fexil said, their glow thoughtful. Tully, you mentioned humans are designing a new joint species station? Yeah, the architectural committee has been working on it for months. Should see the final proposals next week. Why? What accommodations have been made for non-climbing species? Tully blinked. Elevators? Standard automated transit systems? But the overall design assumes vertical architecture? Well, yeah, multi-level construction is more efficient. You get more usable space in a smaller footprint. Plus, it just... Tully stopped. Oh, oh no. We've been designing a vertical maze that other species can't navigate, haven't we? Not can't, Ixquil said. Won't, because it terrifies us. The silence was broken by Huckpah's wheezing laugh. We spent all this time afraid humans were going to conquer us with vertical warfare. Turns out, they're going to do it accidentally through architecture. We're not conquering anyone, Tully protested. No, but you are building environments optimized for human movement without considering that what feels natural to you is nightmare fuel for everyone else, Lixmoth said. She wasn't angry, just amused by the absurdity. Your species thinks in 3 dimensions so instinctively that it never occurred to you that the rest of us don't. Huh. Tully looked genuinely chastened. That's a design oversight. Perhaps a collaborative approach, Fexel suggested. Human vertical expertise combined with other species' horizontal preferences. Create spaces that accommodate multiple environmental needs. Modular architecture, Fumiko mused. Vertical zones for humans, horizontal zones for others. Transition spaces that work for everyone. That could work, Ixquil said, slowly. Though I suspect human children would still terrify visiting dignitaries. Probably, Tully admitted. But at least now you know they're just playing, not training for invasion. Lixmoth looked around the climbing facility, at humans of all ages scaling walls, supporting each other, laughing when they fell and trying again immediately. At Tully's daughter showing a younger child how to reach a difficult hold. At the fundamental joy humans took in conquering vertical space. The predator cubs tumble, she said softly. And somewhere, their ancestors smile from the mountainsides they conquered. That's weirdly poetic, Huckpah said. It's accurate. Humans didn't become 3-dimensional combatants through aggression. They became 3-dimensional thinkers through evolution. The combat applications were just incidental. Still terrifying in tactical simulations, Ixquel pointed out. But irrelevant in practice, Tully said. We're not looking to fight anyone. We just want to climb things, build things, and maybe teach our kids that falling down isn't the end of the world. High above them, a human child reached the top of the tallest wall, rang a bell mounted there, and whooped in triumph. And Lixmoth, xenobiologist and professional observer of species behavior, finally understood. Humanity's greatest advantage wasn't their ability to fight in 3 dimensions. It was their absolute refusal to recognize that 3 dimensions should be frightening in the first place. That, more than any tactical doctrine, would reshape how the galaxy thought about space itself. One climbing wall at a time.